If you're a fan of the Las Vegas Raiders, you should be really upset with the Atlanta Falcons. You should hate Atlanta for what they did drafting Michael Penix 8th overall, because before the 2024 draft took place, there was no way I thought Michael Penix was not going to be a Las Vegas Raider. They had brought him out on a top 30 interview. They had a lot of interest in Michael Penix, and I thought that Penix was the perfect fit for the Las Vegas Raiders in terms of how he would have meshed with their culture. He has a lot of swag. He's a high character guy. He would have got along perfectly with Devontae Adams and Antonio Pierce. But the Falcons deciding to do one of the dumbest decisions in NFL draft history, taking a quarterback when you already paid for Kirk Cousins in free agency, and he's already up there in age, and you plan on sitting him for 2-3 years. By the time Michael Penix starts for Atlanta, he's going to be closer to 30 years old. This is somebody who is good enough to start and produce at a high level from day one if he was given the starting job. Now for the Las Vegas Raiders, you miss out on Michael Penix, and then J.J. McCarthy went next, and then Bo Nix followed after. You ended up being unable to fill the biggest need that you had going into this offseason, which was finding a franchise quarterback. And now you enter this season, handicapped with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell. The Atlanta Falcons really effed over the Las Vegas Raiders in the worst way possible. You can make the excuse of, man, we didn't want Michael Penix because he had the injury concerns. It didn't matter if Michael Penix had a few season-ending injuries at Indiana earlier on in his career, because his last 2 years at Washington, he played in every single game. He didn't get injured nan time. So if you have somebody that's been healthy the last couple of years, I don't really have too many concerns about your durability going into the NFL when you've proven that you can stay healthy. The Raiders needed somebody who not only could produce at least above average level at QB, but they needed somebody who this locker room could rally behind, a quarterback who could galvanize the team. Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew aren't going to galvanize the Las Vegas Raiders this year. If you watched Netflix Wide Receiver with Devontae Adams, this dude was insanely frustrated with how bad the QB play was. And there was a reason why on his recent appearance on Club Shay Shay, he made the joke about wanting Tom Brady to come out of retirement and play for the Raiders. There was an old head that told me a few years ago that there's truth behind every joke. He knows that the Raiders quarterback position is not good, and despite what he may say publicly, his body language and the Netflix documentary series said otherwise. And it didn't look like he had too much confidence in Aiden O'Connell. And with them throwing him hospital balls in training camp, that it's only going to be about a matter of time before frustrations start to boil over and Devontae Adams really lets his anger be known publicly to everybody that, hey, he's not happy with how the QB situation is playing out down there in Las Vegas. The Falcons gave the Raiders one of the worst possible lessons that you could learn during the draft, and that is, if you need to draft a quarterback, no matter if you have to give up a little bit too much to go get him, if you believe this dude can be your guy, you have to go get him. You thought that taking Michael Penix at 13 was a reach. Well, the Atlanta Falcons said, hold my beer. And even if it was a reach, if you would have traded up to 7 or 6 to get Michael Penix, you still would have had somebody who can give you better quarterback play this year than what you're going to receive this season. Not only do you have two of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL that could be starting for you, but you also have one of the worst offensive coordinators calling plays on that side of football for you. Atlanta did the Raiders a huge disservice when they drafted Michael Penix overall. I was hurt for Raiders fans out there. And I'm not even somebody who really cares too much about Las Vegas, but I really wanted to see them get their guy, because if you have Michael Penix going into this season, I would view you as a lock to make it to the playoffs, because Michael Penix is way too good to be riding the bench for 2-3 years behind Kirk Cousins. If he was on the Raiders or the Minnesota Vikings, he would have been a day one starter. I had a really high first round grade on Michael Penix. He throws the football insanely accurate outside of the numbers. He's a fantastic deep ball thrower, has a rifle for the arm. The dude ran 4.5 at his pro day. So he has tons of athleticism. He's a great locker room guy. You love his character. You love how he was able to overcome several season-ending injuries, turn around his career at Washington, be a Heisman finalist. This dude would have been a perfect fit for the Raiders organization, because right now it's really hard to sell me that the Raiders are going to overachieve this year, having the worst quarterback play in the league. Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew aren't going to shock anybody. They're not going to be that good. Raiders fans are just trying to buy into some false hope just to have a reason to be optimistic about this season. But once you get to week 8, week 9, the Raiders are pretty much going to be looking forward to the 2025 NFL draft, when they have an opportunity to finally get their franchise guy, because they probably are going to end up having a top 3 pick. Having the Atlanta Falcons take Michael Penix at 8 really destroyed what could have been a really good season this year for Las Vegas, man. And I still don't understand the decision by Atlanta to take Penix that high. They had other areas of need that they needed to concern. Their defense still has a lot of holes, including on the defensive line when it comes to who's going to be able to get after the quarterback. You would have been better suited just trading down, drafting Dallas Turner, and then taking a quarterback later on. But for the Raiders to have Atlanta take Michael Penix at 8, I mean, it really had to be devastating for Antonio Pierce and their new general manager, Tom Telesco, because, I mean, you needed a quarterback really badly this offseason, and you still have yet to address that position. Gardner Minshew is nothing but a average starter at best. Normally, he ends up giving you decent QB play, but he throws his wide receivers into danger. You saw how he got Michael Penix's head taken off his damn shoulders against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he was the reason why Indianapolis didn't make it to the playoffs. The only reason he was good was because of the coaching of Shane Steichen. So the Raiders are in a really bad situation thanks to the Atlanta Falcons screwing them over and taking Michael Penix at 8. Because if they would have passed on Michael Penix, there was no chance he was going to end up a Las Vegas Raider, man. Having Michael Penix on Las Vegas would have changed everything for the Raiders going into this year. And without him, you still don't have a good answer at quarterback. And that's why I don't believe the Raiders are going to have that much success this year. And I think they're going to end up being one of the worst teams in the NFL, despite how much I love Antonio Pierce and how good that defense is going to be. You only can go as far as what your quarterback takes you. It's a quarterback-driven league. You're not going to be able to win just relying on having a good run game and defense. It's not the 90s or the early 2000s anymore. It's a passing league. You got to throw the football to win close games, and the Las Vegas Raiders don't have a QB who's good enough to win these one-possession games, because if they did, you would have already had a guy, Aiden O'Connell, who already would have proved himself. He had ample opportunity to prove himself last year. He didn't do anything noteworthy against the Miami Dolphins. He struggled against the Minnesota Vikings. Hell, he was about to get benched in that game. And then he ends up going off Thursday night against Brandon Staley and his final outing with the Chargers. And then he kind of changes his perception a little bit. But there's not a lot of potential there with Aiden O'Connell. And there's not really too much juice with Gardner Minshew neither. There's a reason why he's a journeyman backup at this point in his career. The Raiders got really screwed by Atlanta. If you're a Raiders fan, you should be really pissed off with the Atlanta Falcons, and you should be rooting for them to fail at every turn, man, because Atlanta did the Raiders really dirty by not allowing them to get a chance to address their quarterback position, taking Michael Penix at 8.